Greetings and congratulations, Warren Wilson College class of 2021. And congratulations as well to faculty, staff, families, and friends. What a moment this is. You face a disrupted landscape of change like nothing I've seen in my 65 years on this planet, 35 of which I've spent probing some of the world's worst environmental problems and solutions as a journalist. It can be paralytic and draining to confront a future that feels like you're forced to play speed chess while walking through a fog-cloaked maze of tripwires and landmines and the rest. It can seem unbelievable at times, but I wake up each day hopeful and engaged, and I hope to convince you this isn't wishful thinking. First, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please stop and take a deep breath. Then let it out. I mean, really. Maybe one or two more, actually. You've earned a breather. And there's a long journey ahead. To help, here's an inspiring moment from my Sustain What webcast when Karen Alley, a hardworking young climate scientist at the University of Alberta, joined us and thrillingly played a hypnotic hammered dulcimer composition called Into Open Air.
Wow.
Thanks.
Wow, that was great. Oh my God, Karen, I am absolutely enthralled with this hammered dulcimer now, man. I mean, I'm first of all, how does this even happen?
I just love the reaction of the comedian Chuck Nice, who's deeply focused on climate change, even in his comedy, but also on the human connections that can come through laughter. And those connections are the source of solutions. These arts-focused Sunday shows are my soul boost after weekdays spent digging in on past the pandemic, on clean energy policy, on disaster preparedness, and the rest. Karen Alley uses music to stay centered. I use music, I use community, walks in the woods with my wife and our dogs. You know what soothes your spirit. Don't lose that amid what feels like endless urgency, finding a job, staying safe, and all the rest. Yes, on an even bigger scale, urgent work is required to address sustainability challenges, but there too, I recommend blending any sense of urgency with some patience. Those words may seem weird in the same sentence, but I'll try to explain why that feels necessary to me. We've been in surge mode so far, going from 2.7 billion people when I was born in 1956 toward 8 billion now, with the world population almost certainly hitting 9 billion by 2050. Just in the last 3 decades, humans have emitted more than 800 billion tons of CO2, heat-trapping gas, into the atmosphere, nearly 40 billion tons just last year, even with the great global slowdown from the pandemic. That's certainly not the kind of emergency brake we need going forward. But perhaps this great pause, as some have called this past year, offers your generation and everyone alive today a sense of what societal characteristics might produce a better human journey going forward. Imagine an economy that truly, concretely values the caregivers, maintainers in our lives, that values the makers and responders among us in ways that are missed in the current economic models that grew out of the last century or two. Imagine building a clean energy system that empowers lives and livelihoods from rural Appalachia to urbanizing Africa. Imagine building a less polluted information system, one that makes the most of global internet connectedness, transparency, and knowledge sharing, while limiting the toxic, dangerous polarization, hate, and fakery. It's doable with urgency and patience. One tip for sure, don't unplug, please. The world needs you online. It may feel like hard work. I don't mean addicted online, I mean engaging constructively. If you give up, the haters and disinformers will happily fill your space. Think of it like a workout, like a practice, like yoga, like physical fitness. Then turn it off for a bit. But when you see a novel species of insect, for example, rev up the phone and post the inspiring image on iNaturalist. Sharing information, sharing joy and wonder can build a better world. Here's one more bit of imagining. Imagine the value of cultivating and spreading the capacity to have an adaptive mind. To me, this may be the single most important goal right now in a century of rapid change, layers of uncertainty, and enormous consequence. It's a concept championed by Susie Moser, a social scientist working to build resilient communities and policies in the face of climate change. But its value goes way beyond climate. Susie explains that an adaptive mind is a set of traits, leadership skills, and capacities that allow an individual embedded in social networks and institutions to respond with agility, creativity, resolve, and resilience, and to do so when facing pervasive uncertainty, traumatic experiences, or the anticipation of trauma, and challenges associated with deep, systemic, and transformative change. Ponder those words and think about the world around you. Seems like a pretty great fit to me these days. Susie's work is sufficiently important that I hope you'll explore her ideas at this internet shortcut, j.mp/adaptive mind project, no spaces. So how do we get there? The good news is that the Warren Wilson community is already on this journey. When I visited your school in 2009 for a Headwaters Environmental Conference, I marveled at your living, working campus with the productive farm and forests as important to the learning as the classrooms. I loved how the focus on scientifically measured environmental performance and performing arts as well links Warren Wilson with the wider Appalachian community. I've tried to keep track since then, and I was excited to see how the Appalachian Studies curriculum has further connected scholarship and rural society. And now you're among the leaders on the top sustainable colleges list. And in 2020, Warren Wilson not only fully divested from fossil fuels, the school also became a case study in responsible and productive investment in companies and funds building a better future. Best of all, in almost every instance, students, you have been leading these efforts. And the work continues. Just last week, I visited Warren Wilson's Facebook page and saw biology major Sophie Allen tackling plastic waste produced by the 3D printer in the Creative Technologies Lab. We need creative technologies in abundance, but we also need to track what's coming in and going out as we build this new future. Sophie's automated spooling system, just like my stories, may not save the planet on its own, but it's a step in a great direction. When tackling huge systemic challenges like the global surge of plastic waste or global warming, what's needed is motivation, innovation, communication, and sustained assessment to know what's working or not. I just want to leave you with a quick final set of tips I find useful when navigating complex challenges. First, don't wait for clarity. Some of those listening now might have attended that Headwaters gathering in 2009. If you were there, you probably heard a great take on acting amid uncertainty from one of the pioneers of ecological economics, Herman Daly. As he put it, when you jump out of an airplane, you need a crude parachute more than you need an accurate altimeter. I couldn't agree more. In the context of the climate crisis, more than enough is known to act now to cut local vulnerability to today's climate hazards, while also pursuing global cuts in heat trapping pollution. We can do more than one thing at once, right? Second tip, embrace diversity. Americans, all too slowly, have begun the hard work of grappling with and overcoming centuries of aversion to racial diversity. Here I'm talking about embracing diversity of views and sources of expertise. One of my biggest mistakes in my 33 years of reporting on climate change was spending too much time talking to climate scientists. That may seem weird. I love climate scientists. They're amazing pioneers in a tough field, and their work is incredibly interesting. It's taken me from the North Pole to the Amazon rainforest to supercomputer centers in the Rocky Mountains. But it took me until 2006, 18 years of reporting, before I realized what I was missing. That's when I finally began interviewing social and behavioral scientists about the climate challenge, asking them why we seem so stuck. They laid out a mountain of research I had missed in all that time. All that focus on melting glaciers and burning forests, I forgot to look at the inconvenient mind in here. Research showing vividly why big risks can hide in plain sight, why we haven't really confronted climate change despite such clear evidence. When you have time, go to the web shortcut j.mp/scariest science to read an essay of mine describing what I found in more detail. This body of science is indeed scary, but it's also invaluable and points toward powerful steps for cooperation and action, even amid disagreement. Social and behavioral scientists still all too rarely convene with what some call the hard sciences. Of course, it's all hard science, as any sociologist and psychologist would tell you. The reality is the climate challenge cannot be tackled effectively without both. And they have to be in the room, they have to have fluency, and then they have to have ways to connect with the wider public. This leads to my third point, composed of a single word: listen. Most of my storytelling journey has been a one-way street, telling stories. Listening is the key to progress amid complexity and conflict. Solutions emerge when there's back and forthing. A friend of mine at Columbia, a psychologist named Peter Coleman, runs a project called the Difficult Conversations Laboratory. I'd love to see one in every community on Earth, as you can imagine. A key tactic they find when looking for cooperation amid deep differences is listening. And I mean really active listening, not the kind of impatient listening I and other journalists typically do when we're just waiting for the perfect soundbite to come along and then we quote it, snip it, edit it, and go forward. Or the other kind of listening and conversations you may know, where you're really sometimes just waiting to make your point more than actively absorbing what the other person is saying or feeling. This is a vital practice facing a problem as complex as climate change, in which we actually need what some ecologists call response diversity. That's this idea that ecosystems, when they're stressed out, they've found that the ones that do best, that are most resilient, are the ones that have species that have a variety of responses to a stress, not all the same. In our society, we need edge pushers. We need group huggers. Imagine how humanity would have fared tens of thousands of years ago if we had all hung back by the fire or all headed out over the next ridge. We probably wouldn't be here. The world right now is too complex, for example, for one energy path. So we need more. How do we have the conversations that foster the capacity to do that? They involve listening. Sadly, I can't do that with you today, given that this is a one-way talk. But please follow up with me at Revkin on Twitter or by email. Find me on the Columbia website. I'll offer one final tip. Don't discount love and faith. That may sound weird coming from a science writer, but here's what I mean. Our challenge is fitting humanity's infinite aspirations on a finite planet and pursuing global well-being are often delineated by data. What's the rate of warming, the loss of species, the level of poverty that we pursue? The menu of choices societies face can be expanded by science and technology. Genetically engineered foods could help end hunger. Safer, smaller nuclear plant designs and battery breakthroughs could help slow warming. But the choices we make will be shaped mainly by our values, not numbers, by how much we value others, other people, other species, including generations yet to come. And faith, I don't mean religion specifically. I mean faith in the potential goodness in every person and the leap of faith that's necessary in making a choice when facing big unknowns. Don't take my word for this. In 2014, at the end of a week-long scientific meeting at the Vatican on sustainable humanity, I turned to the legendary 96-year-old oceanographer, Walter Munk, physical oceanographer. He helped win World War II by building wave forecasting models, making it possible to do beach landings with some confidence in the weather. So I asked Walter, after all that time, all of his decades of work, what do you think it'll take for humanity to have a smooth journey in this century? he turned to me. I assumed he was going to say something technological about carbon capture or fusion power or maybe political will. What he said was this. He said, "This will require a miracle of love and unselfishness." Walter passed away at age 101 in 2019, but his vision of the future will be with me the rest of my life. Thank you, and here's to a stirring and productive journey ahead for all of us.